All right, good. Now we're recording so I can have it for other people. Okay, so we can go through this in a Q&A type of thing, or we could just read through this. So let's just slowly read through this. And if anybody has a question, go ahead and unmute, or however we do this Zoom thing. So a beneficiary designation helps assets pass from a deceased owner to the new owner when the original owner is deceased. So I know we repeat, but I do see that in a lot of legal language. So obviously when an owner of an asset passes away, if it's got a designated beneficiary, it'll pass to the new owner once that original owner is deceased. So we hear about it in life insurance, annuities, IRAs, and other qualified accounts like 401ks, 403bs, drop programs, whatever, teachers, state workers. But what about the other assets? The house, the car, the bank accounts, the brokerage accounts, jewelry, artwork. I've had clients leave gun collections. I've had clients leave, old china plates from, generations passed down, whatever the case may be. But you got to remember, some of these things aren't probatable because they don't have a title, or they don't, it's not a tangible type of asset with the ownership proof. So always remember, when you're talking to these people, we're not attorneys. We don't offer legal advice, but I usually word it as, I understand the consequences of what happens when you have this or when you don't have this. So it just seems to me, as as an advisor and a coach and counselor, it's like, well, look, if you don't eat your food, you may starve to death. So, I'm not a nutritionist. I don't know all about nutrition and stuff, but I surely do know if you don't eat, you may starve to death. If you don't drink, you could die from dehydration. So your best bet might be to make sure that you're eating and drinking. Kind of works the same way. So we're not attorneys, we don't have legal advice, but we kind of have that end game result. We know what's going to happen if they don't have these things in place, and it's just our job to coach and counsel. So we do life insurance, so we're familiar with the beneficiary question of the life insurance, and we know we have to ask it because it's part of the application, but it's also important to know why we ask it. And I think all of us as insurance specialists do know why we ask it. Not only because it's part of the application, but when the owner dies, we want to know who's going to get that money. And this is a great part to pivot to other assets. So look, Bob, we have your spouse as the primary beneficiary here on this policy. And we decided, well, the kids as contingent beneficiaries, but what about the other assets? What happens, when you die, your wife will get the death benefit from this policy, but how's she going to get the car? How does she get the house? Or how does she get this? Or if they're single, Bob, once you're gone, where does all this stuff go? How do you want this stuff to pass? We know the life insurance policy will pass easy because we have a designated beneficiary. But what about the other stuff? So we know that in life insurance and annuities, when the owner dies, beneficiary collects the death benefit, sometimes tax-free, sometimes taxable, and they go on about their business. The remainder of the assets most likely go through probate through the deceased's will or trust, dictating the distribution, unless they too have beneficiaries. There's no reason to probate. Most clients that I have that pass away, if there is something to probate, I didn't know about it, or it was my mistake. And I have ample stories of my mistakes and ample stories of I did the right thing. So we can add a beneficiary to most assets via a simple signature on a proper document. We, the agents, must know the basics. Again, we're not attorneys. We don't offer legal advice. We're a dictionary, a resource. You do not have to be an attorney to know that probate is timely and expensive, and the attorneys always benefit because of the cost. Attorneys always make money, and all they do is swipe a signature and push papers around. So real estate. So this is where the rubber hits the road. These are really real estate, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, and vehicles. Other stuff, the valuables, the plates, the guns, the watches, the clothing, all that other stuff is really not too relevant because it can be notated somewhere in their legal documents. If they do have a will, there's parts of the will that have a separate writing that you can say, my Rolex I leave to Bobby, the Timex goes to Mary, and the diamond ring goes to June, whatever the case may be. That's not going to go through probate. It's in separate writing. It's in the legal document. It works fine. So the real estate's the big one. I am in Florida. I've done some work in most states here in the country, but once it goes to the attorney that does a deed or a quitclaim deed or a ladybird deed, I'm typically out of the picture, but I know it's done. So in Florida, we have, and again, I'm not an attorney, I don't claim to be one, but I've just done this for like 20 something years. In Florida, we have something called a ladybird deed or a quitclaim deed. So a ladybird deed says, I, Eric, leave Jamie my house. I own it. I live in it. It's somewhat like a life estate deed, but I retain complete control while I'm alive. And once I die, that property passes on to the new owner. No probate. When you have a will, my will says, I, Eric, leave Bobby everything I own, but everything's titled in my name. So now Bobby is the executor of my will. He's got to take it to the courts. He's got to go through probate. And the probate courts determine that, yes, Bobby is the rightful new owner of these assets. Now they may pass to him. It could take 2 years. It could be 20 grand. I have a client, she paid 2 grand to probate $7,500, and it took a year and a half. It's ridiculous. A $6,000 stock account and the $2,500 savings account at Wells Fargo. It's ridiculous to spend that money. If the client and myself had worked better together, I would have had him pay on death the bank account to his daughter, and I would have had him transfer on death. You could see under bank accounts and brokerage accounts, transfer on death the brokerage account. So his daughter, Patricia, would have inherited the $2,500 from Wells Fargo. Just they would have written her a check, pay on death. The brokerage account, you could see transfer on death, would have just transferred right to her. It's $6,500. I think he's got 10 stocks. So he owns, very little positions of these stocks. They were more like sentimental to him, whatever the case may be, but it could have gone without probate. So now I've got to open a new brokerage account, transfer the 10 stocks, liquidate the 10 stocks, send her a check. It's a pain in the butt. So I could have done my job better. But anyway, so the real estate, if you have clients that own homes, just tell them, look, your property could potentially go through probate. There's ways to avoid it. And, maybe you need a trust attorney or an elder law attorney to make sure that happens. And then you could go online and Google. Look, somebody asked me in the Facebook post about California. I simply Googled California ladybird deed, and it popped right up that it can be done in California. It may be a different name, but you're basically putting a beneficiary on a real estate. And it could be investment properties. It can be LLCs, interests in LLCs, that type of thing. There's really not much that should go through probate. So the real estate, ladybird deed or a quitclaim deed. Quitclaim deeds are typically for trusts. So like I noted in here, look for attorneys, but there are differences with spouses. Like, for example, I have a revocable living trust, like many of my clients do. My real estate will go to that revocable living trust to protect my wife and my children. But we're married, so it wouldn't go until the second owner passes. So if I die first, the house stays the way it is. It's protected by the trust. If we both die, the house goes to the trust and other assets as well. If you're single, it makes a heck of a lot more sense because you have nobody to leave it to other than probate or a trust. So befriend an elder law attorney. They don't have to be old. A lot of guys I use are younger, hungry guys that like Medicaid or they like the wills and the trusts. They don't charge a lot because they're young. And somebody put in the post, there's a website, go back through that post, and somebody put in a website that I actually reviewed, and the questions are comprehensive regarding creating a trust. It's difficult though, if you don't know the mindset behind those questions. Why is it asking me, do I have bloodline from another marriage? What does it even mean? So that's a whole other topic, and I'll talk on it as much as you guys want. So anyway, the house, big deal, ladybird deed, quitclaim deed, do your due diligence, go online, Google it. It's all out there for us to understand. Bank accounts, individual or joint bank accounts have a pay on death designation. So basically, Eric Wilson goes into a Bank of America, opens an individual account that I put, $500 a month in, whatever, for retirement, whatever the case is. If I die, my wife would have to probate that account because it's in my name. But if I open that individual account with a pay on death designation to Hillary, my wife, if I die, she goes into the bank with the proof of ID and a death certificate and say there's $3 grand in that account. They're going to cut her a check. No probate. Same thing on a joint account. Joint bank accounts can have a joint pay on death. So yes, as the owners are alive, they own it. You lose one owner, it transfers ownership to the existing owner. But what if Mary and Bill are killed in a car accident out to Olive Garden one night? The estate would have to probate that joint account. So you just throw on there a joint transfer on death. Well, if Bob and Mary die in a Walmart truck accident, where does the money go? Well, it pays out to their children, equal share, or it pays out to their revocable trustee, 100%. It doesn't matter. It's got a beneficiary. So there's no probate. Brokerage accounts work the same way, except it's called a transfer on death. So it's an individual transfer on death or a joint transfer on death. So again, Eric Wilson opens a brokerage account at Schwab. He puts $500 a month in and buys Dogecoin or cryptocurrency or whatever the case is. And from February, I put $2,000 in, and now it's May, and I've got $30 million in that account because of Dogecoin or whatever the heck is going on. Fantastic, but I go to get milk at Publix and I get run over by an old lady in the parking lot. Well, that millions and millions of dollars are going to go through probate if I didn't put transfer on death. So I put $3,000 in the account. I buy all this cryptocurrency. 3 months later, I'm worth $30 million and I die from a Walmart truck running me over. If it has a transfer on death notation designation to it, then it would just transfer to the new owner, whether it's my trust or St. Jude, whatever the case is. You can give it to whoever you want. And in each situation with banks and brokerage accounts, they have their own forms. So what I've typically done in the past is I'll tell, most of my clients are older. So I'll say, look, Mary, when you go to the bank, you tell little Johnny at the bank that you want to put a POD, or you call your broker. The brokers typically know because we're trained to know. Folks in the bank don't necessarily know because it's more of an hourly type of situation. It's not the 1980s and 90s anymore when you go into a bank and you see Bob, your banker, who's been there for, 20 years. You get, Jimmy, he's a high school guy, his tie's a little crooked. He has no idea what a pay on death designation is. So I tell my clients, look, you go to the bank, they don't know what you're saying, just call me. Call me. Hey, Eric, it's Marge. I'm at the bank. The guy doesn't know. Put the guy on the phone. Bob, it's Eric. I'm her advisor. Here's what I need you to do. She's got a joint account with her husband. It's a transfer or it's a pay on death. Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Good. They need to sign it. And then when you get the statements in the future, it has a POD after the name. So it would say Eric Wilson, Hillary Wilson, POD, or Eric Wilson, Hillary Wilson, TOD. So this way it's noted that this is a pay on death account or a transfer on death account. Vehicles. If you own a vehicle and you have the title, just flip it over and sign it as owner. You're not selling it. You don't have to tell anybody. Keep it in a lockbox. Keep it in a lockbox. Keep it with all your other legal documents. Because I've had clients die. I had one case I remember specifically. The two cousins came down to help clean out the aunt's apartment. She really had nothing money-wise. She had little trinkets and stuff that the girls were going to keep, but she had a 94 or something like that BMW 5 Series, low mileage, always maintained at the dealer. And I'm like, you got to find that title, because I know she's been in and out of this office, and I know we advised her to sign the back of that title, because if she goes and that title's sitting there unsigned, it's probate. Nobody's going to probate an old car. It's not worth it. So the girls were in the process of selling the condo and they found the title, and lo and behold, it was signed. So one of my partners at the time bought the car from her to give to his kid because it was such a great car. I mean, it was a beautiful freaking car. But again, reiterates the fact that if you own the car and you hold title, just simply turn it over and sign it. If I take the title after you die, all I go do is re-register. It's signed by the owner. Nobody's asking if the owner has died. And this can be done with RVs and boats and anything that has a title. People, anything that has a title, you can sign it. If you lease or loan, it's not relevant. If you lease a car and you're 75 years old and you die, you're just giving it back. If you lease a car and you're 49 years old, you're most likely going to give it back. Your spouse or something isn't going to, keep the car. If it's a loan, again, sell it, give it back, whatever the case is. You're dead. You're not responsible for it. Other valuables, again, like I said earlier, guns and artwork and jewelry and, all that stuff, you can notate it in the separate writing of a will. There are places in the back of a will that you can notate this stuff. It's not really complicated. We just have to know that when we're sitting with a client and they go, yeah, I can't tell you how many clients have 5 bank accounts. I don't know why. Well, we opened this one and then we got a toaster and then Bob got a, I don't know. I don't get it. I tell my clients, when you get to a certain age, whittle it down to 1 or 2 accounts with POD, and that's it. You don't need all these different accounts because you start to forget where the money is, and you may POD 1 account or 3 accounts and forget 2 accounts and then die, and the money may never even get recouped. I've had clients not go after money. It's not worth paying $2,500 to go after $3,000. It's not worth it. Just forget it. Leave it as unclaimed. These are typically family members that are, removed. Like, I didn't ever even talk to my uncle. We'll just bury him and forget it. I'm not even interested. I live in Texas. I'm not paying an attorney in Florida. I don't even know what's going on. It doesn't matter. And I'm sure there's times where assets go unclaimed because they just don't even know they exist, which sucks. It's really unfortunate. I encourage all my clients, when you get to a certain age, make a list of your assets, and I'll walk down the list with you and make sure that each one is identified as to how they're going to go when you go. So you got real estate, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, vehicles, the other stuff, the tangible items. I've been doing this a long time, and I can't say I've run into anything outside of those types of asset class. Any questions?
Hey, Eric, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
What's the POD and the TOD?
So POD, if you look on those notes, and I can get this out to you guys if you want, I'll post it somewhere, get with somebody to, for you guys to download this or print it out. Like I keep like a book like this. So if I'm out in the field, I've got like all my notes and stuff. So like my appointment agenda, final expense, all the kind of stuff that would, decline you from coverage. It's just my article and stuff. Put it in something like this. So this way, if you're sitting with a client and you're talking and you do sell a policy and you're talking about the beneficiary designation, flip to that page. I go, look, I'm not an attorney, but I do know from my years of doing this that when clients die, you may have a beneficiary on this life policy, but you don't on other stuff. So let's go through this. So the POD is for the bank account because the bank accounts just keep cash. I have a bank account and a savings account. It just keeps all my cash. What happens when I die? Well, my wife's a joint account owner, so she'll get the money. What happens if we die together? Well, shoot, I didn't think about that. Well, we have a joint pay on death that says that checking account will pay to Eric Wilson and Hillary Wilson's trust upon the death of both grantors. So there's no probate. It just pays to the trust. The trust has language that stipulates who's responsible for the children, how the money's going to get separated, how it's going to be in trust. The will and trust side has always really interested me, but the pay on death and the transfer on death, those are specific to banks and brokerage accounts. So you just remember, if you have a bank account and you die, you want it to pay somebody. I got a bank account at Wells Fargo. If I die, I want it to pay somebody. Who's it going to pay? It's either going to pay a kid or a trust or a charity or whatever the case is. Brokerage accounts have securities in them. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. Those you want to transfer to the new owner. I didn't put that note in there. I meant to put that note in there, but keep in mind, it's not for IRAs and 401ks, right? Because those are beneficiary friendly. My 401k or my IRA stipulates my spouse, but my bank account doesn't. My brokerage account, they didn't ask. My vehicle, I don't know. So remember, the bank is to pay out. The brokerage is to transfer. I got $3,000 in the bank. I die. I want it to pay somebody. I got Tesla stock in my brokerage account. I want that to transfer to somebody. So this way it doesn't have to be liquidated. It can be kept in the legacy. So, the things that I try to build are for legacy. They're for my kids and my spouse and, maybe their kids someday down the road. So my trust is ironclad when it comes to protecting assets after my death. My wife is younger than I am, so she could remarry. I don't want my my money in death going to her new spouse or her new spouse's kids or her boyfriend's kids or girlfriend's kids. I don't care, whatever the case is. I want it to be protected for her and for the boys. So to reiterate again, bank accounts pay out, brokerage accounts transfer out. Does that clear it up a little bit?
Yes, I just wanted to know if, and I think you answered it, if it could be transferred to a minor.
No,
Oh,
no, that's a really good question. No. So I've had this before, and I'll always speak from experience. I had a client, Mickey, he left life insurance to his 9-year-old grandson. Mickey was a client here in Florida. The daughter is up in Massachusetts. So when Mickey died, he left life insurance to Justin, and at the time, Justin was 9. He could not inherit that money because he's a minor. So unfortunately, the mother and the father had to petition the state of Massachusetts to be proven financial guardianship, not legal guardianship as a parent, but financial guardianship. So the state wanted to know that if Justin inherited this 45 grand life insurance death benefit, that the parents weren't going to spend it frivolously or on themselves. So that's a huge, huge hot button. Do not leave assets to a minor. If you have minors you want to leave it to, you got to get involved with an attorney and get some sort of trust. It gets really complicated. That's a good question though. And like I said, I only know that because obviously I only know anything because I've been through it at least once. She got the money, Justin got the money, but she didn't want to pay the attorney to $4 grand. I mean, it wasn't an easy thing. But listen, honestly, I don't manage them anymore. I don't know. Massachusetts was a real complicated state to get registered in as an advisor. So, and they were my only clients in Massachusetts. So I sent them packing, but the kid was making money in the IRA. I mean, this kid was 9 years old and he inherited close to 200 grand. I mean, and this was a long time ago. So no, if you have minors that, if you have clients that talk about leaving money to minors, grandchildren, you got to tell them, stop, you got to get an attorney. You can't leave assets to a minor. You can, but it's a nightmare. But does this stuff make sense, guys? Does it kind of like, okay, so here, check this out. Here's some scenarios. So you got this one I love because this one I run into more than not. But you got Mary and Bill, they own a home here. They got IRAs, 401ks, individual bank accounts, a joint account. Bill's got a classic Porsche. She's got 2 leased vehicles. They got property in Arizona and New York City. Bill's got an online account. He plays the market. They both have adult children with grandchildren. They have a revocable living trust to collect the assets after they're both deceased, thus avoiding probate and protecting the bloodline. They follow the guidance of their attorney, financial plan, and insurance specialist. What can they do? Honestly, this couple really doesn't have to do anything. If they've got a trust in place, you look at this little scenario and you got to know Mary and Bill, they've done well for themselves. They've got savings. They've got assets. They've got play stuff, Porsches and vacation homes. They got a trust in place and all the stuff goes to the trust for distribution. That's the best way to do it. You got Mary here in town. She owns a home. She has a checking account with about 18 grand. 8 checking and savings. She has annuity for her daughter, life insurance and annuity for the daughter, no IRA. She's got a lease. She used to use somebody, but she's been burned. So she went on LegalZoom. What could we do to make her properly protected? So she owns the home. Did she do a deed? Maybe we could do a ladybird deed to the daughter. She's got checking and savings. She could use a POD to the daughter. She's got the annuity, which has a beneficiary, which is probably the daughter. The life insurance has a beneficiary, which is probably the daughter. No IRAs, so no need for beneficiary. The lease, the daughter would just give the car back or maybe buy it out. I don't know. Maybe she's got some equity in it. So say, look, we can review the LegalZoom documents. I can read it, take a look. Again, I'm not an attorney. I'm not claiming to be one, but I've seen this a handful of times and I might be able to help you out. So grab the documents and let's take a look. So, I just read that and I go, the home needs to be looked at. The checking needs to be looked at. Let's just review the beneficiaries of the life insurance and the annuity. Maybe it's an old annuity. Maybe you can roll it into an annuity. I don't know. Maybe it's I don't know. Somebody mentioned in the post that it's another way to uncover, and it is. It's just to pivot into other stuff, and it's also you're nosy because you want to help, you want to protect, and you know better. And then you see Mary and Bill at the bottom. They rent an apartment. They have Social Security. It covers the bills. They got no money left at the end of the month. They've got a little in savings, final expense insurance. They have no legal documents because they think they have extraordinarily little, but what could they use? Now, also, any of these scenarios, and I don't want to get too much into it, but typically when you have a will or a trust, they provide supporting documents. So the supporting documents would be your power of attorney, durable power of attorney, not a healthcare POA, a durable power of attorney, a living will, pull the plug, don't pull the plug, a healthcare surrogate, who's going to speak on my behalf if I can't. So those types of documents would be surely required for every scenario. My feeling is Mary and Bill, number one scenario, they have it done because they have a revocable trust. Most attorneys I deal with, it's part of the package. You know, you get the will, you get the trust, it has a pour over will, you get the quit claim deed for the primary residency, and you get the living will, healthcare surrogate, and power of attorney. And one guy I use down in Boca, I think he's still 800, I think, or I can't remember. My old man brain is starting to click in. I can't remember, but it's less than $1,000 for everything. And it's the same trust that I had, that he did my trust years ago. It's the same thing. All the documents are in this trust, the real estate deeds, everything. So if I croak, I don't have to worry about it. And I sleep a hell of a lot better at night, knowing that if I don't wake up for some odd reason, my wife and kids will be fine. So you look at scenario 3, there's probably not much, but these folks would probably use the supporting documents, because if one of them can't speak on behalf of themselves, the other one's got to step up. And in any of these scenarios, if none of them, you know, Mary and Bill could be out for dinner and they could become incapacitated. One could die, one could be in a coma. You got to have these documents to be able to speak on behalf of, you know, of somebody. So that's a kind of a whole other, the living will, healthcare surrogate, power of attorney. But guys, there's no reason you can't go online and start to familiarize yourself with these things. It's just part of, in my world, it's part of the conversation. Because I mean, I commend our agents for going out and selling a hell of a lot of premium, but I always feel like you walk out of that house with a sale and you're not done. There's something missing. Something could be passed on. Information could be passed on. Let's talk. And again, it can always, if you want, it'll pivot into the money, into the real estate, into the other assets, and just more of the mentality of the client. You know, Mary and Bill could have a ton of money, but still not know what this stuff is. You know, I find in my book of business, the more money they have, the less they know, because they either don't care to know or they've relied on their team. I had a client, I'll never forget him. I was trying to sell him Medicare and he goes, Eric, I've got Team Stu. And Team Stu is, and I'm like, I got to get the heck out of here. I don't want to be part of Team Stu. You know, this guy had a lot of money on down south here in Florida. And I just thought to myself, like, this isn't the guy I want to deal with. So, and hopefully Stu had the proper team, because just because you have Team Stu doesn't mean that they are properly protected. So I think my Zoom only allows me 40 minutes, which is fine. I don't want to, I could ramble on about this stuff all day, but most of you would probably jump out the first floor window. So hopefully this gives you some insight into beneficiaries. You know, there were some comments in that post that, you know, wills are for, I remember one post, and I don't take it, you know, too hard, but the kid was like, you're wrong. You can't, wills are for assets that can't have legal benefit. No, guys, look at this stuff. Do your due diligence. Real estate, ladybird deed, quit claim deed. Talk to the client, tell them to talk to an attorney. Bank accounts, POD, brokerage accounts, transfer on death, vehicles, sign the title. The other valuables, separate writing. My mother did it with her grandmother. When my grandma was sick, they had, you know, everything they had was beneficiary friendly. But, you know, the tennis bracelet went to Joni. Uncle Larry got the fishing poles. I don't know, whatever. But there was nothing that had the probate ultimately when Alfred and Wanda passed away, because everything was beneficiary friendly. Why? Because I know what I'm doing. And even though they were my family, I don't like to stick my nose too much into family stuff. But I tell everybody, you got to make sure this stuff's protected. I don't care what you have. I don't care how much you have. Not relevant to me. Relevancy is what's going to happen when you die. Where's all this stuff going? I don't know. Well, let's work it out. Let's talk it out. And I'll use this little sheet as a resource, and I'll use my upline as a resource and talk to whoever I can, because once I walk out of here, Mr. and Mrs. Client, I want to make sure that not only does the life insurance protect your wishes, but that everything else you have is protected. Any other questions? All right, well, good stuff. I hope you all had some good information, and that it makes sense. And reach out anytime if you need it. I'm more than happy to talk about it. Okay. All right, so I'm going to end it. Is there any other questions you got for me? All right, let me go into this. Oh, great. Awesome. Thanks, info. Good. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, listen, you guys have a great day. And if anybody needs anything, just, reach out, Facebook, serve the people, whatever you need. All right. Have a great day, guys.